I always say that like the regional Queensland property market is made up of different sub-markets. So there are different regional towns that make up the aggregate of the regional Queensland property market. And these include Cairns, Mackay, Townsville, Rockhampton, Bundaberg, Hervey Bay, the likes of Toowoomba. The reason why I think these are good markets to invest is that each of those towns in their own right, they make a genuine contribution to net GDP output in this country. Townsville has a huge mining and construction sector. Mackay has a huge mining and construction sector. Rockhampton has an agricultural and beef sector. Bundaberg has an agricultural sector. So from an economic point of view, they're all really stable markets. And then with that economic stability comes stability in the housing market. So I find that those are good markets to invest.
Welcome to Get Invested on the Property Hub podcast channel, the leading weekly show to help you unlock your full self-health and wealth potential. I'm your host, Bushy Martin, and each week I go deep with the best investors, experts, leaders and founders to find out what it takes to break free from the grind, discover freedom and live by design. Subscribe now and join me and get invested in the life you really want. Let's get started.
Hi freedom fighters. Where's the best place to buy property? In the capitals or in the regions? For some time now, the debate over country versus city has been raging backwards and forwards like a swinging pendulum. For many years, the industry talk from many commentators was all about buying blue chip properties as close as possible to the inner ring of the city, whatever that actually means, which can at first glance sound sort of logical. But then COVID disrupted the planet and pushed people to separate and seek space, and there was an acceleration and explosion of migration from the cities to the regions as the growing exodus to lifestyle really started to ramp up. And it felt like overnight the conversation shifted from what demographer Bernard Saltwell captured with the move from the fried egg model of city concentration to scrambled eggs decentralisation with a move to growing regional lifestyle hubs. And since then, the public debate has ebbed and flowed between country and city, depending on who you're listening to. And I think a lot of the location bias is actually driven by the hidden agendas of those who are pushing their own self-interest barrows. For city-centric property players, it's self-serving to push the capital concentration barrow, using employers' return-to-work requirements as the excuse to justify the story around the boomerang effect of people returning to the cities. On the flip side, the continued tree change and sea change regional access to lifestyle, which was underway well before COVID kicked in, conveniently suits property players pushing a national, borderless and regional approach. So who's right? Should you buy property close to the city or spread your wings into growing regional hubs? Well, in my humble opinion, it's not a black or white or a right or wrong answer. I think both are right and both are wrong, depending on your property goals and your capacity. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. So my answer is that the decision to buy property in the cities or in the country, or a bit of both, depends. It depends on why you're buying, what the property needs to achieve, and what you can actually afford to buy. If you're buying a property primarily for capital growth that's affordable to hold long-term, then you need to focus on scarcity in areas that are, or about to be, experiencing above-average property value increases from committed growth drivers, like the 3 I's of growth that I referred to as committed infrastructure and growing industry and incomes, which is similar to the PIE principle of population, infrastructure and employment that Drew Evans outlined on Get Invested recently, alongside John Lindemann's 3 P's of property, purchase power and population that he detailed in episode 285 of Get Invested back in July 2023. Now, these growth driver models all revolve around scarcity of supply and growing demand. But it's not about chasing a current hotspot that will soon become a not spot and buying whatever you can afford to purchase in these areas, even if this is just a small unit, if that's all you can get your hands on. This is the mistake that I see many property investors making because most of the growth comes from the area, the land content, and the property profile. It's about adopting the top-down scarcity model that I detail in my book, The Freedom Formula. So instead of chasing location and buying whatever you can afford, which is the mistaken approach that most investors and some property professionals take, you need to start with your purchase price power that you can actually achieve and afford, and then identify the highest potential growth location around the country for a 3 or 4 bedroom home on a block of land in a tightly held high demand area. which are at the sweet spot of the property growth profile, in a location that's about to experience continued growth as you progress top-down from state to suburb to street and finally to the property. This means that your affordable purchase price power for a standalone high-demand home will drive where you buy, and this could be in the city or in the regions. So it's not an or, but an and discussion, because it depends on you, your goals, and your capacity. Similarly, if converting to cash flow is your key driver and growth is not the major concern, then you're seeking the lowest priced property with the highest rental yield to optimise the cash flow and the residual dollars that actually end up in your pocket, which is more likely to be in regional hubs, but may also be achieved in units or apartments in the capital cities or via high-yielding commercial properties. So as you can see in here, there's no simple blanket answer to buying property in the cities of the country. It all depends on you, your circumstances, your goals, and your capacity. So I urge you to smash through any fixed preconceived notions that you might have developed on the city versus the region debate and keep an open mind on the topic so that your elite team of independent property professionals, including your property strategist and your buyer's agent, can give you the best chance of finding the highest potential performing property from amongst the 15,000 odd suburbs and towns and nearly 11 million properties right across the country. Which means that both the regions and the capitals provide good opportunities if you know what you're looking for and how to find it. It's not a matter of preferring one at the exclusion of the other. And to further help qualify the shifting tide of this debate, CoreLogic's recent regional market update report demonstrates this data-driven message where it's clear that currently and in recent times, property values in Australia's combined regions continue to outperform the combined capital cities, despite the post-pandemic normalisation of internal migration trends, affordability challenges, and a reduction in buying capacity in the midst of our higher interest rates. And one of the highest performing regions from a growth perspective in recent times that CoreLogic's report reinforces includes Townsville, Bundaberg and Rockhampton in Queensland's north. Similarly, from a rental yield and cash flow point of view, Central Queensland's Gladstone and Mackay were two of the national top 6 regional markets enjoying double-digit rental growth over the past year. So clearly there's a lot of good things happening with good ongoing potential in regional Queensland. And to help you look under the hood to find out what makes this region tick and hum in this up-and-coming location, we're joined again by Troyson Bassani, who's the founder and head of research at Life Buyers Agency, who specialise in buying property in this area for local, interstate and international buyers. Now, last week we delved into Troyson's personal journey, and this week we're going to deep dive into the role and benefits of good proven buyers agents as a precursor to unpacking the pros and cons of regional markets with a focus on the emerging and continuing opportunity in his home turf of regional Queensland. So welcome, and let's get invested again. Troyson?
Wushi, thank you for having me again. Super excited to get in and unpack regional Queensland and all your listeners.
Absolutely, mate. It's certainly an area that's on everyone's lips at the moment. But before we sort of get into that, I just want to sort of start from a perspective of asking you what you see as the biggest mistakes that property buyers and investors make when it comes to buying property.
A couple of things spring to mind, Bushy, when you ask that question. And I've been saying this for a while now, but this is one of the big ones for me was what I see a lot of people make the mistake of doing is that before they invest in a marketplace, they don't firstly become a student of that marketplace before they invest. By that, I mean, they don't spend time to get to know the market, to learn about the market, the good, the bad, and the ugly about it before they go and spend their hard-earned money. You know, like I see time and time again, people want to spend, their hard-earned money. They want to try and build wealth, yet they don't even know what the median house price growth has been in that suburb for the last 5 years, or what has been the compound growth over the last 10 years, or what has been the vacancy rate trend for the last few years. What is the socioeconomic makeup of that suburb? Like all of those little things, I think people need to become students of the marketplace before they invest in it, because that's going to help mitigate a lot of the downside risks, but at the same time, maximize the upside potential. And that's where I see a lot of property investors fall over, is they don't invest time to become that student. Another one I see a lot, Bushy, is we have a lot of investors have a tendency of following the herd when it comes to buying in regional markets in particular. That's what I find anyway. They listen to, mainstream property experts, mainstream publications. And what I find with those is that there's a conflict in a lot of that information, is because they've often had access to that, 6, 7, 4, 5 months ago to the general public, and they'll release that suburb to the masses after they've already bought, 30, 40, 50 properties there for their clientele. So I found a lot of those people that release these hotspot locations and suburbs have a vested interest in it, because they want the herd to go there and prop everything up and to inject the marketplace with additional demand. And I always say, just in-house, which is that if you follow the herd, you end up in the wilderness of mediocrity. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that I'm seeing on the ground in regional Queensland. And lastly, I think from an asset selection point of view, Bushy, what I see is that a lot of people, they look at the asset they're selecting from their own perspective and not from the perspective place of the marketplace they're investing in. Because I think a lot of investors forget that people that are going to be, the property that you buy, there is a local market that props it up from a capital growth point of view, and there's a local market that actually rents the property and creates the necessary cash flow you need to service the debt that you have against it. So when you don't look at the property from their perspective and what's desirable to them, what's a good fit for them, I think you end up coming to the marketplace with your own biases, and what might, be a good property in the capital city might not be a good property in regional Australia. And when you apply that level of perspective, I think that's where a lot of people become unstuck, and where a lot of investors make the mistake.
Yeah, beautifully said. You summed that up ideally, and that's a great pivot, I think, into the benefits of buyer's agents. So from your perspective, and I know you've got a vested interest in this because you are one, but why do you think property buyers need to engage a buyer's agent over finding and buying a property themselves, and in particular, why they'll be engaging someone who's local on the ground versus some of these crowds who purport to be able to buy any property anywhere right across the country?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing I want to emphasize, Bush, is yes, I do have a conflict in this, but as a professional and as someone who cares about, what people's goals and aspirations are in life, we have to first qualify and understand if we can even add value before we even offer them an opportunity to work with us and provide the necessary service to get them to where they want to be. So I just want to make that clear from the very get-go. This service isn't for everyone, and we only work with a select few. And obviously, the select few that we tend to work with are those that have a knowledge deficiency in the marketplace they propose to buy it, or often these are time-poor people that have, don't have the necessary time to invest in their property journey because they're busy professionals and have their own lives to live, and that's often convolutes their property experience. And then the last thing is that a lot of the people have a tendency to where was I going this? I lost my train of thought there, Bushy, but
no, that's okay.
Coming back to it, like why someone. So I just wanted to highlight that these are the people that we obviously want to work with, and not the service isn't for everybody. But in saying that, why I think someone should use a buyer's agent is if I believe they are experiencing some sort of buying pain in the marketplace. So if you're someone that wants to invest in, let's say, an area that I specialize in, like regional Queensland, if you're unsure about what are the better suburbs, what are the better popular suburbs, what are the better streets, what are the better quality assets in that marketplace, then I think leaning on someone that has that level of expertise that can solve or fulfill the need that you lack, then I believe that's where a good buyer's agent can come in and add value. But if you're someone that, has an understanding of the marketplace, have lived and breathed some of these areas that you're supposed to invest in, by all means, maybe it's not the right fit for you.
Yeah, no, very good call. And again, that's a great segue into getting you to tell us why you've started Life Buyers Agency and what sets you apart from the rest in that capacity.
Well, I think I might have touched on it in our previous conversation, but the reason why I started Life Buyers Agency was because I saw a lot of people, property investors in particular, looking to buy in regional Queensland in the markets that I was very familiar with, markets that I've been very intimately involved in over the course of my life. And a lot of them I felt as though lacked a lot of key insight about the marketplace and about some of the suburbs, about some of the better performing assets, to the extent that, a lot of them made a lot of buying decisions that were non-favorable to their goals and property aspirations, meaning they lost money or never made money at all. So I saw that there was an urgent need for buyers that needed someone on the ground to hold their hand and guide them through the marketplace and connect them with the better opportunities in the marketplace, the better quality assets that ultimately get them closer to where they want to be in terms of their different property related goals. So that's why I started up the buyers agency a number of years ago.
Yeah, and I love that. Well, let's jump into central and regional Queensland, and given it's the pulse of where you are and what you do, why do you think central and regional Queensland is a good place to invest, and why?
I always say that the regional Queensland property market is made up of different sub-markets. So there are different regional towns that make up the aggregate of the regional Queensland property market. And these include Cairns, Mackay, Townsville, Rockhampton, Bundaberg, Hervey Bay, the likes of Toowoomba.
Yep.
And the reason why I think these are good markets to invest is that each of those towns in their own right, they make a genuine contribution to net GDP output in this country. Like Cairns has a bustling tourism hub. Townsville has a huge mining and construction sector. Mackay has a huge mining and construction sector. Rockhampton has an agricultural and beef sector. Bundaberg has an agricultural sector. They all make a net contribution to GDP. So from an economic point of view, they're all really stable markets. And then with that economic stability comes stability in the housing market. So I find that those are good markets to invest in, all because that at economic or macro level, they're all very stable and they all have a lot of things going for them. And then additional things such as, new infrastructure investment, new government investment, that just props up what's already there, which is already a really stable and healthy economy, and that trickles down into the housing market.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, there's obviously some lifestyle benefits given the climate up in that neck of the woods. But on the flip side of that, Troyson, to sort of balance the equation, I'd love you to talk about any risks of investing in those areas. And in particular, I love your thoughts on the sort of growing likelihood of potential extreme weather events in central and North Queensland and their impact on property and potentially ongoing insurability. Can you talk to that for us?
Yeah, sure. Well, from a risk point of view, I think the biggest risk that a lot of investors face when buying in regional Queensland, this is what I feel as though is that there is an overabundance, Bushy, of what I call non-investment grade assets. So it is very easy for an investor to get sucked into what might be positioned as a good investment when in fact it's a bad investment, because there is an overabundance of non-investment grade assets. And obviously, if you have the ability to select the investment grade assets, and puts you in a different class as an investor, and you're certainly in a position where you can outperform the market. So that's one of the biggest risks, is the overabundance, I believe, of poor investment grade stock. Yep. But there are additional risks such as what you alluded to there, and flood, cyclones, severe weather events, and if you have a good due diligence process, you can mitigate a lot of those risks, because we've certainly learnt over the years that history has the tendency to repeat itself in many locations. So if you avoid the risk from the very get-go, then you'll avoid history repeating itself. And by that, I mean, if you buy in a flood zone, then the chances of that repeating itself, it's going to likely happen, whether it's in the next 10 years or 100 years, or might happen next week, right? We can't control some of those variables that are external to what we can't control. And what we find is that if you can mitigate some of the risk and not buy in some of these areas that have historical flood issues, then as an investor, you're putting yourself in a good position there from any future disasters, because that in turn then has a ripple effect in terms of what you will pay from insurance premiums. Because to touch on that, there's huge variance in insurance, cover. Even in Townsville, for example, one part of Townsville you're looking at $7,000 to $8,000 for annual insurance cover versus some of the places that haven't been touched by flood, $2,500 on average. So that can be the difference between costing you a fortune to hold and being in a negative position, cash flow position, or positive cash flow position by getting the asset selection right and avoiding some of those pitfalls, because they can have a costly impact, not only from an insurance point of view, but disaster point of view as well.
Yeah, no, well said. Now, one area I also want to dive into, because there's a bit of a perception of quite often of smokes and mirrors around the whole exclusive, silent and off-market property side of the equation with buyers agents. So from your perspective, how do buyers know they're actually getting a good property at a good price for a property when it's off-market and hasn't been market tested? And how do you approach off-market properties in that sense for the buyers that are looking to get good properties for good value?
Well, what I've learned, Bushy, is that not every off-market opportunity is a good deal. In fact, our office probably churns through about 40, 50 off-market opportunities a week across regional Queensland. And none of them are investment grade, often than not. How we determine whether or not it's a good fit for one of our clients is obviously knowing, what's good value for money, what is an investment grade asset, and having an asset selection framework and criteria, so you can vet and screen those properties through that framework, right? If you don't have that, you're going to be basically looking at every property, as a potential deal when you're not. Because if you have that framework, then you can sort of, pick and choose what's good and what's bad and filter through the what's good and bad. But we find that the asset selection framework really guides us, because not all properties that come through that are off market are good deals.
Yeah.
And we're lucky as buyers agents, because we, obviously professional buyers in the marketplace agents come to us with these different opportunities, knowing that we have qualified buyers, but in saying that, not all of those opportunities are good ones.
Yeah, no, extremely well said. Now, you've touched on this already, but just to sort of bring it to a head, for those who have really resonated and engaged with what you've shared with us last week and today so far, what's the profile of property buyers and investors who are and aren't the best fit to work with you and Life Buyers Agency?
Well, I suppose the ones that are the best fit that we work with, we find second or first time investors. So they've bought elsewhere in Australia, and they own their principal place of residence, and now they're looking to diversify into the regional markets, and they're often coming here for the affordability factor and number two, the yield. So they're chasing those two components, and regional Queensland generally a good fit for that. And it's usually opportunities that are sub 500,000.
Yeah,
we find a lot of investors that have that, but the people that we work with, we find have a shortfall in marketplace knowledge, so they don't really know where some of the better areas to invest are, like in terms of macro locations. So whether or not they should go with Townsville as opposed to Bundaberg, or Mackay as opposed to Rockhampton. And then, even drilling down deeper, once you've, established where to buy as a location, don't know where the better suburbs are within, that location. So we tend to work with people that have a knowledge shortfall, and whether it's at a macro level from a market point of view, at a micro level, at a suburb point of view. And then on the flip side, those who probably aren't fit to work with us are those that already have all those things, that have the capability to know what the good or bad areas are, have lived on the ground, or know people that might be able to help them navigate it. So those are the people that we think aren't a good fit if they already, can fill the void in some of those holes that we fill.
Yeah, I love that. Now, you're probably pretty busy at the moment, given the focus that's happening across regional Queensland. So again, for those who are thinking, gee whiz, I'm feeling really comfortable with what Troyson's talking about and want to reach out. Something I'd love for you to share is, what's your approach to handling competing or overlapping client briefs who are looking for very similar properties at the same time?
One of the things we've learned, Bushy, is that quantity affects quality. So if we have too much clients on our books, what we find is that can dilute the quality of asset we buy. So we only onboard a certain amount of clients each month, and the clients that we onboard, we make sure that they don't have any conflicting briefs, meaning that they don't really mind the same location and have the same budget and have the same sort of investment strategy or goal. So we'll onboard a bunch of people that want to buy, let's say, sub 400, and we'll onboard a bunch of people that's 450 plus, a bunch of people that's 550 plus, and we'll make sure there's no overlap there to avoid that conflict. Because if you have a bunch of conflicting buyers on your books, then not really. Who are you really representing there? Who comes first, chicken or the egg?
Yeah, spot on. Now, sort of leaping forward, because property buying is not just about now; it's about the future and where it's heading. So, I'd love, given your hands-on in the industry, what's your read on current property conditions in both the medium term and the longer term, and where and what are the best investment opportunities for both growth investors and cash flow investors moving forward as you see it in regional Queensland?
What I'm really liking about regional Queensland at the moment, Bushy, is that all the macro drivers are looking very good for regional Queensland, meaning that the economic activity is thriving in a lot of the big regional hubs. The GDP, net contribution to GDP is up. Cost per investment per capita is up. So at a macro level, all those things look good, like population movements is up. And then when you start to look at some of the other drivers like affordability and lifestyle, they're all very well positioned at a macro level across regional Queensland. And then when you start to dive down into individual markets, you find that there's a significant imbalance between demand and supply. Like I did a deep dive into the Townsville property market last week, and I found that it had an absorption rate above 85%. Meaning this was over the last 4 months, meaning that 85% of the properties that were going onto the marketplace there, 85% of them or more were being absorbed by the marketplace. Low days on market numbers, high online search interest volume, and then when you drill down deeper, even at a local level, a lot of inflow and outflow into open homes, things like that. So what we're finding at macro level is really good, and at a micro level, even better, because there is a significant imbalance between supply and demand. Demand is very high and supply is on the grim side when you look at the supply pipeline, even across regional Queensland.
Yeah, no, extremely well said. Now, we've only just scratched the surface, and I know you're on a bit of a timeline, so we'll get you back on the Realty Talk shows to drill into some more detail here. But I always like to switch into the ambush round in the second go of that. So I'm going to give you the blindfold and cigarette and ask you, what's your favourite quote and why?
What's my favourite quote? My favourite quote is by Myron Golden, and it is, "What will get you here won't get you there." So meaning you always have to be a constant state of adaptation, a constant state of learning if you want to get to where you want to be. And what got you to where you are is not going to get you to where you want to be. You need to become a new person. You need to have new habits. You need to have new principles to get you where you want to go. So that was a quote that I really loved and something that's really resonated with me.
Yeah, I love that one. Switching to delivery, Phil, what's the top book that you'd recommend we read and why?
Myron Golden as well, Boss Moves. I think he just really helped me from a business point of view, optimizing my business systems. I think for anyone that wants to get into business, I think it's a really good book to optimize your business, and it's really helped me grow my business for sure. But that's one of my favorite books. And he just has a bunch of different analogies and wisdom and ways to short circuit, from going here to there, just by, implementing some little small things into your life and business to help you, one step closer to where you want to be.
Beautifully said. Now, we've touched on this throughout our discussions, but because my own belief is that sustainable success is based on our habits and the habits we develop. So what's a personal happy habit, rewarding ritual or daily discipline that you employ that you think's contributed most to your success today?
One of the things I try to do daily or every few days, is search for parallels. And what I mean by that is I'll listen to other experts in their field, whether they're, sporting success, whether they're a finance success, whether they're an investing success, whether they're a business success, and look for parallels, right? Look for those parallels around, how they've overcome their challenges or the principles that they have to guide them, their learnings, and use those to apply to my context. So that's it. I try to listen to, someone different when I go for a run, someone different when I go to the gym, someone different when I'm driving a long distance, and then searching for those parallels and then applying those parallels to my own context. And then what I find is that their thoughts are unfinished. And I think it's my job as a thought leader and an expert in my field is to take their thoughts and keep building on, right?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And again, it comes back to your creative spirit, because you can see how something's been applied in a completely different context and go, oh, hold on, I can take that and I can use that here to really good effect. So brilliantly said, mate. The more I talk to you, the more I realise we think the same, mate, because I'm exactly the same as far as that goes. Now, I guess to sort of summarise our great conversations that we've enjoyed today and last week, what are your key takeaways?
Well, my key takeaways, Wushi, is that if you've got to be really clear on where you want to be, I think, and then property just becomes a vehicle for that, I believe. And when you're really clear on where you want to be, you basically can reverse engineer the process from there, and even right down to a point where you can reverse engineer the asset selection, right? If you even were to go out and DIY and not even choose to use my services, if you want a property that's going to double in value over the next 10 years, going to give you, this particular rental yield, desire to maintain, serviceability, then you can reverse engineer that. If you put enough time and effort in becoming a student of the process, becoming a student of the marketplace, and having experts fill the gaps in some of the shortfall you have, you can reverse engineer things and that's ultimately get to where you want to be. Because having $200,000 passive income, having a 4 or 5 property portfolio, that's just an outcome, and that's just almost an event in time. And it's never about that. It's about you needing to become the person that can give those things. Yeah. And that's a key takeaway from me, which I think if more people can become the person that has the 4 or 5 properties, do the things that someone who has a $200,000 passive income has, and they'll eventually have that.
Yeah, love it. Mate, I sound like I'm listening to myself when you talk, Troyson. So I love that. Final question then, if I ask you to get invested, what does that mean to you?
The biggest investment you can make is in yourself. The SME 500, I call it. So invest in yourself, because Bushy, you touch on it all the time. No one cares about your money more than you. And I think the more you can invest in yourself, I think that's what be invested means. I think the better equipped you'll be to navigate the complexities of what is investing, because there are many, right? So for me, investing means someone that accepts they have a knowledge deficiency and is prepared to go out there and fill that knowledge deficiency with the necessary knowledge.
Yeah, no, brilliantly said. Now, for those that have really resonated with your messages in the episodes, Troyson, we'll have your contact details on the show notes, but what's the best way for listeners to find out more and get involved with you?
Well, I reckon first and foremost, if you're someone that's looking to invest and you're open to investing in regional markets, jump on my YouTube channel, have a look at some of the markets I talk about, have a look at some of the tips that I give in terms of navigating the marketplace, and then make a decision from there. I think if you believe, regional Queensland is number one, the best fit, and then, get to know me and what I do, and even look at some of the clients that we've worked with and some results to see if I'm a good fit for you then as well. So go to some of the free stuff that I have available online and on my socials, and use that to go out and have a crack yourself. Or if not, reach out to me and let's have an initial chat. And then from there, that might lead to us helping you out.
Love that. Now, we spoke in the green room about a special offer and challenge that you're going to offer Get Invested listeners. Can you put some shape around that for us?
Yeah, Bushy. Well, for any listeners that, are keen on knowing and understanding more about regional Queensland and where some of the opportunities are, I'm offering to give away a free hotspot pack, that basically breaks down 5 hotspotted areas I think you should have on your radar for consideration if you are looking to buy in regional Queensland. And no strings attached, Bushy. This is me giving away this information for free. Choose what you do with it. It's up to you. And if you want help from us, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, I love that. And it's always better to get real information from people on the ground who are living and breathing the spaces we're talking about, rather than take the risk of relying on pure desktop data. So really appreciate you doing that. And I'll just get everyone to email us at hello@knowhowproperty.com.au with asking about regional Queensland in the heading, and then we'll forward that on to Troyson so that he can get that information to you. So, mate, look, I really want to thank you for taking the time to share all of your thoughts with us and to open our minds to the real regional Queensland opportunity and the benefits of working with proven professional buyers agents over the last 2 episodes. So thanks again, and I look forward to continuing the conversation ongoing through the Property Hub shows.
No, thank you, Bushy. And yeah, happy to jump on any other time and continue to add value to people's property journey.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for tuning in to Get Invested on the Property Hub podcast channel, your home for property investment insights and inspiration. And don't leave yet until you've taken the next step towards living by design by getting my award-winning book, Get Invested, absolutely free when you sign up at knowhowproperty.com.au or bushymartin.com.au. And finally, make sure you subscribe to Property Hub to get your weekly dose of Get Invested inspiration, along with every episode of Realty Talk, Australia's leading property show for red-hot property investing news and insights, direct from industry leaders and influencers. Remember to always get invested in your knowledge, and I look forward to seeing you next time.